What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast, bringing clarity to optometry, business, and entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to join me here, to learn and to grow. I am truly so grateful, so appreciative of all the support as the podcast has been growing, and I've been connecting with people and learning about who's listening and what they're liking and when they're tuning in. All these things have been incredibly humbling. So thank you for all the support. And as always, I would ask, please do continue to support. If you like the content, if you find value, please share it with someone. Leave a review, leave a comment, leave a like, all those amazing things that you have been doing. I truly appreciate all of that. For today's episode, I'm actually going to share an interview that I did on another podcast that's called the Power Hour. And the Power Hour is one of the longest running, most well-known optometry-related talk show, radio show, podcasts, something that I've been listening to for years. And I was honored to be on the show and speak with Dr. Bethany Fishbein, who is the CEO of the Power Practice, an amazing, really well-known consulting firm in the US. And we talked about building a brand and the value of building a brand for an optometrist, for a healthcare professional, and how I went about building a brand for myself and for our clinics. And I think what I wanted to share here was sort of a reintroduction of myself to the audience of the 2020 podcast. By sharing this interview, you get to learn a little bit about me. And for all the new listeners or the people who have joined in over the last couple of years listening to the 2020 podcast who maybe don't know me that well, this will give you a chance to kind of meet me and learn a little bit about me as well and how I got into optometry in the first place. So I hope you love it. And of course, please do check out the Power Hour. They put out amazing content. And stick with us here at the 2020 podcast. We're going to come out with some amazing new interviews in the coming weeks. Hope you enjoy this one. I'll talk to you real soon. Recently, what's happened is people are more comfortable sharing certain things. So in the past, people would just say, I found you online. And then they wouldn't say anything else. And I didn't really probe a whole lot. But now people are openly saying, oh, I saw you on TV or I saw you on Instagram. Instagram's the big one now. The people, I saw you on Instagram. I saw this video that you did. So I thought I'd come to you. And so now it's being shared. I think almost every day I go to work, I think there's a patient that says something like that.
Hi, I am Bethany Fishbein, CEO of the Power Practice and host of the Power Hour Optometry podcast. At Power Practice, we talk a lot about helping optometrists achieve their dreams. And when we ask clients or potential clients what are their dreams and what are their goals, typically people give us their goals for their office. I want to have a $3 million practice, a $5 million practice. I want to collect this much, net this much, have this many staff. But we try to get people to think about their goals beyond the office, not only for what they want their practice to do, but what they want for themselves and what they want their contribution to the profession to be and to the world. So it is always a pleasure to talk to somebody who is making a big impact beyond the exam room. My guest today is Dr. Harbir Sian. Am I saying that right, Harbir?
You got it. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. He is an owner of 2 practices in British Columbia, 1 private practice and 1 sublease. He's a podcast host. He hosts the 2020 podcast. He has done a TEDx Talk. He's an author of many articles. He has appearances on TV. And I learned this morning, most important job of all, he's a dad to 2 young daughters. So you are making it happen. Thank you so much for getting up early and taking the time to talk today.
Thank you, Bethany. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. So I came across you. I got to know about you through LinkedIn, where you have a very active presence. And really today, I want to talk about building that personal brand. But before that, I'm just interested to know about your path. How did you find your way initially to optometry?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Thank you for the intro as well. How I found my way into optometry is really not that exciting. People ask that question because I think a lot of times we like to hear these stories that have some sort of passion behind them. Oh, my mom's vision was terrible and I wanted to go into this field to help people with that. But honestly, towards the end of my undergrad, I was trying to make a calculated decision into which profession would suit me best. And so I volunteered or shadowed a bunch of different professionals, optometry, pharmacy, MD. And ultimately, optometrist seemed like the profession that aligned with my personality the best. Speaking with the optometrists, they tend to be kind of laid back. None of them were really that type A, which I'm not. And one optometrist in particular, Dr. Amrit Power here in Vancouver, when I sat in the exam room with him, it was such a cool experience because it didn't feel like a doctor-patient. It felt like just two people connecting and conversing at the same time. One of them happened to be helping the other person with their vision, their eyes. And so I just felt like that interaction really resonated with me. It wasn't a very clinical experience. It was more of a personal experience. And that's definitely what I like to try to emulate at work as well. But actually, when I was applying to optometry school, there's one word now that really sticks with me. I don't know where it came from, but when I was filling out these applications, I would always write that I want to be an advocate for the profession or an ambassador for the profession. And I'm not sure how I knew that when I was, 21 and still in undergrad and just doing undergrad things. Somehow when I came out of optometry, right away I started writing blogs, and I'd never written blogs before, but I just started writing blogs and emailing friends, and then they would send those emails to their friends because it was like a fun fact about eyes. And I kept that up for a couple of years. And then I started making YouTube videos and then Instagram and then the podcast, and just sort of like snowballed and kind of grew. And ultimately, the underlying theme from all of it has been to somehow advocate for the profession, to educate the public and to let them know that as an optometrist, I'm not just simply spinning dials and giving you a pair of glasses. There's so much more to what we do on the health side of things, on the education side of things. And that's really been the driving force behind some of the things that you listed off the top, the TEDx Talk and the podcast and everything else.
So when you started doing that and you're writing these blogs, did you have a practice at that time that you were promoting?
No, at that time I was working as an associate.
Were you doing just blogging personally, or were you doing this for any promotion? I'm trying to figure out, is this really just a personal passion that you had?
Yeah, that's exactly. So we talk about personal branding. I think now I look back 10 years, I was personal branding before I knew what it was. I was writing these blogs simply from Harbir to the world about eyes. I look back now, I don't know for sure, but perhaps I thought that it was going to help me gain more patience somehow, but really I was just doing it to educate. That was the number one driving force.
I think that genuine desire comes through in what you do. I think that people are hit these days with so much self-promotion from all over, like kind of education disguised as self-promotion.
Yeah.
Or self-promotion disguised as education, I should say.
Yeah, that's it.
And people can see through it. And one of the things I've noticed about the articles and the TEDx talk is you're just putting information out there in such a genuine way that it builds trust. So it's kind of neat. It's not something you intentionally came to because of how it started, and that's who you are.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad it comes off that way. I mean, if there is some other ulterior motive, I try to make it clear, like I am speaking on behalf of a company or something like that. But otherwise, yeah, it's simply, I keep saying it, it's just simply for the fact of education and for the betterment, hopefully, of the profession, because there's a lot of forces out there that are creating friction or difficulty for our profession to move forward. And in fact, something's happening right now here in BC that we are not necessarily fighting, but we're trying to rally the whole profession to make sure we can still stay strong in the long term and not let these other forces diminish and devalue the profession. So that's where most of the energy comes from.
So when you were in school, you kind of came to the profession thinking, I met this optometrist, I like this optometrist, I could be him. Where did you start to realize that the public had this misperception or would benefit from this additional education on what it is that we do as ODs?
I don't know if I remember the exact moment, but I think it was right around the time. Oh, actually, you know what? I think I do. It was right before I officially graduated. Sorry, I had a little light bulb moment there. May of 2010. No, was it May? Anyways, around that time, there was a big thing that happened here in BC. There was a big deregulation of eye care forced by an online company called Clearly Contacts or clearly.ca now. They are a BC-based business, but they're huge. And they forced essentially the government to make a change where they deregulated everything. So people could go online and buy glasses or contacts without a valid prescription, without seeing an optometrist. They could just go ahead and do that. And that really shook. That's probably the biggest thing that our industry has faced out here. And it really shook the whole profession, and everybody was really nervous and anxious. And I think that was actually the impetus for me to get out there. So I was trying to figure out how I could contribute as, at that point, just a student or a very new grad. And I thought that putting the word out there and educating the public was probably the best thing I could do. So I think that's really where it started.
you intended to go back and practice in Canada all along. You're from British Columbia, and then you went all the way across North America and down a country to go to New England College of Optometry. It was always your intent to go back and practice in BC?
Yeah, 100%. There was never a doubt in my mind. I skipped residency for that fact because I thought my singular goal is come back to Vancouver, open my own practice. So I didn't need anything else to get in my way. As far as moving to Boston, the closest, as far as geographically, the closest optometry school is in Oregon, Pacific University. And I went down there and actually was accepted there. But when I went down, I guess I'm a city guy and I didn't really realize it until that moment. I went down, I was like, this is a very nice campus, but tell me where the city, where are the stores and the pubs and the bars and all these places. And they're like, oh, you have to drive 45 minutes to Portland for all of that. So that wasn't really my jam. And then in Canada, the only English speaking school is in Waterloo, which is also a fairly small town, kind of a college town. But then ultimately it came down to between Chicago and Boston. And I just really love Boston. The sports, everything, just something resonated with me there.
Me too. I went to New England College of Optometry
you did too?
also.
Yeah, go Echo.
Graduated in 97. So awesome. I've got a couple of years on you, but I like Boston for all the same reasons.
Yeah, it's a great city.
So when you started with these blog posts, what kind of content were you putting in there? Was it thought out and strategized, or it was kind of, this is what's on my mind this week?
Yeah, it was the latter. And that's kind of how I live my life, to be honest with you. I'm not the most strategic person. I'm not the person who plans ahead a whole lot. Although as I get older and with businesses and with family and stuff, you're forced to. But I like to do a lot of things on a whim and off the cuff. And that's how the blog was. Every week I would say, okay, every Wednesday I'm going to release a blog. So Tuesday night I would sit down and say, okay, what am I going to write about? Again, I didn't realize how much I enjoyed writing or trying to express myself through writing. And I tried to make it relatable and fun. And a lot of times I would write stuff where I was writing, I try to bring popular, like pop culture into it. There was a rap lyric from a Lil Wayne song, or Snoop Dogg said something, or a hockey player got hit in the eye with a puck. And I'd write about these types of things and how they're relevant to eye care. So I tried to make them fun like that. And I think that resonated with a lot of people. And it was fun for me too. So I wasn't just writing dry, a cataract is blah, blah, blah.
And did you work to build your audience, or did it just build organically because people were interested in what you were doing?
Yeah, just organically. I didn't really do any promotional stuff other than as I was saying, I did send these out in emails, but I didn't work to necessarily grow my email list. I just naturally, those emails were getting forwarded from people onto other people. And you could see the numbers on the blog kind of increasing month after month. Obviously, certain blogs got a lot more attention than others, but yeah, it just kind of grew naturally. I think I just was doing it without really thinking about the growth of it. I was just doing it really just to put the education out there. I probably could have leveraged that growth more and used it for other things or actively grown it, but I just let it sort of do its own thing.
And then you said the podcast evolved from there. How did it happen?
So there were a few steps in between. So the blogs led to YouTube videos. You know, I'm fortunate to have good people around me who kind of give me feedback, honest feedback, or just good advice in general. And one of my closest friends, he said, you should be doing YouTube. And this was again back in like 2012. YouTube had been around for a few years, but it hadn't blown up yet the way it has now. And again, I just sort of started making videos that I found fun and interesting. I started making these videos. I created an alter ego, a second character that I called Dr. Einstein, spelled E-Y-E, Einstein. He didn't speak and he didn't talk, but he was dressed up professor-like, glasses, bow tie, white coat. And then I had me who was doing most of the talking most of the time, but he was sort of the comedic relief in those videos. And one thing I've known for a long time is I like video. I like editing video. I learned that probably 15, almost 20 years ago, and I've loved it. So it really gave me the chance to be more creative there and do sort of these side-by-side type of editing type of things that were exciting for me. But as anybody who does YouTube will attest to, it takes a lot of time, so much time to film and edit and all of that. And as soon as we had a baby, I was like, okay, I can't spend 6 hours creating this video now. I have a business, I have a child. So I kind of dropped off the YouTube video thing for a long time. And then naturally led to podcasting was getting really big. And I was trying to see what other way I could create content. One thing I'd like to share with people who are thinking about creating content in some way is often we create our own barriers. We create reasons why we think, oh, I don't have the time or I don't have the resources or the finances to do these things. And when I was looking to create this podcast, I really wanted it to look polished. I really wanted it to look professional, but it was going to be just me doing all of it, filming, editing, all of that, posting it. So I thought if I'm doing video also with it, I'm going to need a good camera. I'm going to need good lighting. I'm going to need really good microphones. This was pre-COVID, so I tried to have as many guests in person as I could, and I needed microphones for the guest as well. And so then I put it off for probably a year, maybe more. And then I thought one day, this thing is just nagging me. It won't leave me alone. The same as when I started my YouTube videos, I kept having this thing that was nagging me and it wouldn't leave me alone. When the YouTube videos happened, my wife, who at that time was my girlfriend or fiance, it was before we were married, but she went out and bought me a nice camera for my birthday. And she's like, here, now just shut up and make these videos. You keep talking about them. And so the same kind of thing happened with the podcast. I was like, okay, how much do lights cost? How much do microphones cost? Turned out the lights were a fraction of the cost of what I thought they were going to be. And I could buy these little lav mics, these little clip-on mics that plug into my phone for like $30. I was like, okay, you know what? I can afford this now, actually. So I finally reached out to a bunch of people that I knew and I said, okay, would you mind coming in for a podcast? And I recorded 5 or 6 episodes first to make sure I felt like it was something I wanted to do. And then I went, okay, I'm going to do this now. I think a lot of times we create these barriers and these obstacles in our mind, but I'm into stoicism and I read a lot of this sort of stoic philosophy type of stuff. And one of the biggest sort of ancient stoic philosophers is Marcus Aurelius and was emperor of Rome 2000 years ago. And one of his key sort of theories or dictums is the obstacle is the way. So if there's an obstacle that you're perceiving to block your path, don't try to go in a different direction. Let's just find out what that obstacle is. Let's go that way and let's figure it out. And so for me, these obstacles were really just imagined. They weren't really that real. And so when I went that way, I found that I could actually continue down this path. And it's been amazing. I love doing the podcast. It's another way for me to just creatively express myself. But most importantly, how amazing people, experts have a voice to continue to promote and advocate and improve our profession. So that path has been winding, like many paths are, but it's been pretty fun for me as well.
So talk about your podcast a little bit. It's called the 2020 Podcast. And what is it? Who are you speaking to?
Yeah, the 2020 Podcast, bringing clarity to business, entrepreneurship, and optometry is kind of the full title. So 5 or 6 years ago, I actually launched my own eyewear brand, an online company, an e-commerce company. And through that, I was exposed to a lot of people in different industries as I was trying to grow the brand. So entertainers, athletes, business people. I was networking a lot and trying to grow the company and build its awareness. And I met such amazing people, these celebrities to different levels, and other people. And at the same time, I was speaking with students or new grads just through social media about how they can build their influence, build their personal brand, how they can become better at business. And I thought, on one hand, I have these amazing, successful people that I'm speaking to through my online business. On the other hand, I have these young people who want to grow their business and become successful. How can I bring them together? And that's where really the impetus for the podcast truly came from. So I reached out to those people that I had known through my e-commerce brand. And I said, would you mind sparing me an hour to talk about how you became this television personality, how you became this super successful business person? One thing I've found over the years is most people are pretty happy to share their story or to contribute and help others if they can, if you give them a chance. And so the podcast was an opportunity for those people to share their side of the story, their struggles, their successes. And there's one sort of common theme is that everybody has struggled. You could listen to an episode that's from a successful hockey player and you'll say, oh yeah, I've been through that myself, or I remember being in a certain position like that myself. But then you hear how they got out of it. Now you learn how the next time you go through that same rut, how you can work your way out of it and come out better. And that was really the kind of the goal for the podcast, is to share those stories. Somebody said it's more like a success podcast. I don't think I'd use the word success, but it's not really your standard clinical type of conversation for the most part. I'd say half of my guests are from eye care and the other half are from other realms. Probably my favorite guest, I don't know if you're going to ask this or not, but very recently was Haley Wickenheiser, who is, I think it's pretty unanimous, she's the greatest women's hockey player of all time, ice hockey player. And so she's got multiple Olympic gold medals, multiple world championships and all these things. And she is one of the grittiest people I've ever spoken to or met. And now after her hockey career ended, she went and finished medical school and she's in the process of finishing her residency. Like, just crazy, all the stuff she's doing, but it's more about how or what her mindset was going through all of those things. And I love to share that. That's kind of the core of the podcast.
That's extraordinary. My family is Canadian. My husband is Canadian and very determined to raise our children that way too. So my son growing up, one of his favorite books, I don't know if you have this for your daughters, it's called Z is for Zamboni. And it's a whole alphabet of hockey. So I forget if Haley Wickenheiser is H or W, but she was in there. That's how I knew her name as a New Jerseyan.
Bethany, the title of the book would actually read Z is for Zamboni, just so we're clear.
That is true. You are correct. I've been doing it wrong for almost 19 years. You are 100% correct. Very cool. So how did you get the TEDx Talk? How did that happen?
Yeah, I paid a lot of money. No, I'm kidding. That's not how it happened. It's funny how you hold certain thoughts in your mind and somehow they come to fruition. It's hard to really say exactly how it happened, but I've envisioned myself doing something like that for a long, long time. I've even gotten to the point where years back when I was doing my YouTube videos, I was like, how can I recreate a TED Talk? Not to say that I'm doing a TED Talk, but I want to recreate that entire stage and that environment and make my own series of talks. I was going to call them TOD Talks. So TED stands for technology, I think education and design, or entertainment and design. So TED. I was going to make it technology, optometry and design. And I was actually planning that out. Like I was like, where can I get the big red letters made? Who's going to film this? I was planning this whole thing out and it just became too big because I just had this vision again in my mind that I was going to be on that stage somehow. And I thought if I could recreate this and have optometrists come and speak on the stage, I thought that would be kind of cool. But it was just too big of an endeavor for me. So many years go by and I think I just, through all the networking that I've done, and I think ultimately through the passion that I exude or express when I talk about optometry and eye care and just eye health, it just ended up being someone that I know happens to know the organizer of a TEDx event. And that organizer happened to express that they were organizing an upcoming event and they were actively looking for speakers. Our mutual friend said, hey, you should talk to Harbir. That's ultimately what it came down to. But I believe there were other things happening in the background. I don't know how many people think about things that way about the universe and how energies work and whatnot. But clearly something happened along the way that made that conversation happen. And ultimately the organizer got in touch with me. And initially the talk was supposed to happen before COVID, or in 2020, it was supposed to happen. And then COVID obviously shut everything down. And at that time they said, okay, so what would you talk about? And I spat out all these ideas of, oh, I love philosophy and stoicism. And I could talk about the mindset and all these things. And on my podcast, I've learned about these things. And they're like, so many people talk about that stuff. There's so many people who talk about mindset and whatnot on TED Talks. Like, what are you bringing as an optometrist? That's what we're interested in. And so I showed them some YouTube videos that I had made. I call it chiasma. So the chiasm being this place where the two nerves come together, this junction. And so for me, it was this theory of bringing optometry or eye care and philosophy together. Because again, I'm big into philosophy. So I do these like short 1.5 minute little segments, passionate. If you've seen like Jay Shetty or someone like that, it's sort of a Jay Shetty kind of talk, bringing in like a philosophy and then how that relates to our eyes and how powerful our eyes are and how much of our brain is taken up by our vision and the visual system and all these things. And I made like 5 or 6 of these videos. So I showed them, and this is what we want. We want you to do this on stage, essentially, because this is different. It's poetic, it's philosophical, but you're talking about eyes. There's very few TEDx speakers who have spoken about eyes. And so that's how it all sort of came together, and it became a roughly 10-minute talk. I would love for everybody to go and check it out. I can say I'm happy with the way it turned out. Obviously, I think there's things I could have done a little better, but happy with the way it turned out. And I think the message is conveyed fairly clearly that our eyes are very important and eye health is very important, and we should make it a priority in our lives.
I'll put the link to the TEDx Talk video in the show notes here because I thought that too. It's just one of those things I think in private practice, we and office staff too get caught up in just getting through the day. Sometimes you just, okay, here we are at work. This many patients are going to come in. We're going to do this. There's some emphasis on making money and all of that. And so it was a good, not a step back, but like a step out to get that 10,000 foot view on, wait a minute, this is really important. Like this is really important to life, to health, to sight. And so it was just a good perspective. So I will absolutely link that and would recommend everybody check it out. And you've done other cool appearances too. I mean, on your LinkedIn, you've got links. You're the go-to expert on TV when they're looking for someone to talk about eye stuff. Did you actively seek those out, or that just kind of manifested itself as well?
That one, I think I was a bit more active on pursuing. I tend to deliberately put myself into uncomfortable situations so I can grow and I can get a little better at them. So my family would laugh at me for saying this, but I wasn't the most comfortable in public speaking, but like they know that now I'm okay with it. But in the past years, I would say, okay, but I'd like to be comfortable with that. I want to be that guy on the stage. How do I do it? And the only way to do it in my mind was to get on stage somehow, look for those opportunities. And the same went for like these TV appearances. I saw people on TV and I thought that would be cool. I'd like, again, it fit a line, not just simply to be on TV, but to align with my goal of becoming that advocate and that ambassador, to be out there, the one to share the messages that I think are important. And so one of the key things I share with everyone or young ODs who are trying to build themselves up in the profession, build a presence, is to be involved with their association. So provincial or state or whatever local association. So it's called BCDO, BC Doctors of Optometry is our association here. And so from day one, when I graduated and became an optometrist, I was a member and in getting involved and on committees. And then they started sending out emails like, we have this opportunity. Is there anybody who'd like to go on the radio or go on TV? And I would instantly respond as soon as I saw it. It'd be like, yes, yes, yes. Slowly, then they realized that I was interested and then I was comfortable enough doing it that they started to reach out to me. And now we have like sort of a small group. There's a handful of us in BC that when our association needs someone in a certain region, they'll reach out to us. So it's kind of cool to kind of be that key person. Again, it just is something that feels right to me to kind of reach out to express or to advocate and then be an ambassador for the profession as a whole. But yeah, I think that being involved in the association is the number one thing I think I put on the top of the list for anytime I'm talking to any OD is if you're wondering how you could be out there more, that's the best thing to do. So many of the opportunities that have come to me through as an optometrist, as far as public speaking and whatnot, have come because I've known someone through our association who needed something and they reached out to me for it. So I'd highly encourage people to do that.
And these things now, it's out there enough that this has to have turned around and helped your practice. You kind of started with this vision, maybe someday patients will want to see me because I do this, but it wasn't the primary driver. And it sounds like it's never been for you. But how has it affected your practice that you're being this person and this advocate?
It's funny, it has impacted the practice for a few years, but I hadn't really looked at it and quantified it. And it's only recently, as in like the last few months, it sounds kind of silly, but again, I'm not that person who I wasn't really looking for it to be that for me. But I think recently what's happened is people are more comfortable sharing certain things. So in the past, people would just say, I found you online, and then they wouldn't say anything else. And I didn't really probe a whole lot. But now people are openly saying, oh, I saw you on TV or I saw you on Instagram. Instagram's the big one now. The people, I saw you on Instagram. I saw this video that you did. So I thought I'd come to you. And so now it's being shared. I think almost every day I go to work, I think there's a patient that says something like that now. So it's definitely become a more common thing and it's helping the practice. But I'm also a little awkward when people say that to me. I'm sitting in the exam room with them. They say, oh, I saw you on Instagram. And I say, oh, okay. So now I feel like I have to be that Instagram person. Which video did you see? What was I talking about? Okay, try to bring that same energy here in the eye exam. But yeah, it's definitely helping the practice grow, especially now that we're doing more specialty stuff. So we have more dry eye. We're doing a lot of dry eye. We have radio frequency, IPL, iLux. We're doing all these things and we're doing more myopia control. So when I talk about those videos, now I have to say, when I talk about those things, I know that there are going to be people who see me locally who would be more interested in learning more and come and see me in person. But I know that my videos are being seen across North America. So I'm getting messages from ODs in Texas saying, hey, tell me about your radio frequency, or patients in Toronto saying, I'd love to get this treatment. Where can I go? It's broadly being shared for everybody's education. But I know that locally people are going to come and see us because they see that I have this technology that could benefit them.
And not only a number of patients, of new patients coming to see you, but I think the thing that happens when someone's seen you speak and has come in because of that is they're coming in with a level of trust that maybe you have to work for with somebody who just truly saw you online, picked your name off a list. So the patients who are coming in are kind of primed and ready for what you're presenting because they've already heard it. They already like it.
Yeah. In my podcast, I'm in the middle of doing a series for marketing. So I have a few guests coming on who specialize in personal branding or online digital marketing, so on. That's one of the key messages that they're sharing in the series is video is the number one way to get out online to share your personality. And when potential customers or patients see these videos, they can learn your personality and they can build that trust with you before they've ever come in and seen you in person. And that's where I think this being online and building your personal brand is so important. A couple of years ago, I did a lecture, like a COPE approved lecture, beginning of 2019, so 3 years ago. And again, the concept of personal branding was still a little bit new for a lot of people. I think it still is a bit, but it was quite new for a lot of people. I did this lecture and I was surprised at how many people showed up. It was personal branding and online marketing. And at the end of the lecture, an older OD put his hand up and asked, "Why are you doing this lecture? What is the purpose?" I was like, either my whole presentation fell really flat or I'm ahead of the curve and these guys don't know why this is important yet. But I hope most people know why it's important now. I was trying to show that if you get out there, you can build this trust, exactly what you said. And the trust is what brings people in. Building trust is so hard. And if you can do that before someone even sets foot in your office, that's a huge win. And so that's, again, why I keep encouraging ODs to get out there and start to do this type of thing, get on video and share.
So I've heard a couple of good, solid pieces of advice here. I mean, the things that I'm taking are, one, do it for the right reasons, right? Do it because you want to and you have something that you want to contribute, and not going in with the intent to monetize it or I'm going to do this to just get patients. Do it because you have something, like you said, kind of nagging you that you want to put out there. And the second is, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good.
Oh, yeah.
You have something
right.
and just do it. It doesn't have to be the perfect set, the perfect setup. You can start and improve from there.
Yeah.
I'm hearing do things that make you uncomfortable. That's a big one. I'm hearing that personally. I know that video is important and I am absolutely dragging heels in the ground. No, you can't get me there. So I'm hearing that, and a little bit of just do it. Any final advice for someone who hears this? I think, as you said, the young ODs are coming into this profession, having heard podcasts, having followed ODs on Instagram, having favorites they watch on TikToks. And so they're coming into this thinking, how can I be that? Any other advice to give?
Yeah, absolutely. In that lecture and in general, I share what I call the 3 pillars of personal branding. It goes for online and offline, honestly, but if we're talking mainly online. Number 1, as you touched on already, is to bring value. If that's your leading motive, is to bring value to the person on the other end, that's, I think, how you bring the authenticity. So value goes in a few different ways. In my opinion, education is the easiest way to bring value, right? Because we are all experts and professionals. We can talk about an eye drop. We can talk about a technology that we offer. We can talk about something in the eye. We can educate the public. We might think that it's mundane information, but there are a lot of people out there who don't know this information. The other ways you can bring value are comedy, humor, telling passionate stories, things like that. However you can integrate those things. You know, there's, what's the guy's name? The Singing Dentist or something like that. He just does these funny songs where he makes up his own words to a song and they have like nothing to do with dentistry, but like he's so popular on YouTube. So it's like, if you have a hobby or something that you're good at, that can be your value that you bring, right? So number 1 is value. Number 2 is engagement. So when you're online, actively engaging with people, let's say you put up a post and someone comments, says, "That was really funny." Respond to that. Like, that's the simplest way to engage. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Kind of like a Google review. Make sure you respond and engage when you get a Google review. But the other way to engage is to actively go out there and find people to engage with, right? So you have to think of yourself as not just the person putting out content, but as the audience as well. So go find people who are relevant to you in your community you'd like to be part of and go comment on their stuff. Go reach out to people in person. That would be like going to an event and networking with people, right? You're going somewhere, you're going to shake hand. Hey, what do you do? Oh, that's interesting. I'd like to learn more about it. That's essentially doing that online. If you use hashtags, you can search optometry or eye care and you can comment on relevant posts. So value, engagement. And the last one is consistency. And consistency means 2 different things. It means posting sort of regularly, but I think people get too caught up in that. The second type of consistency is posting on all the different or a few different platforms. So you have the same voice on all the different platforms, right? So Instagram is my primary outlet, but I post on LinkedIn, as you've seen, on Facebook and other channels. TikTok, not so much, but I'll post the same video or the same post on all channels. And so different people will see it, but they'll all hear the same voice. I think that consistency is really, really important. And on that note, about getting comfortable, end of 2018, I decided I was going to make a dedicated effort to become more comfortable online. And I told my wife this. I'm like, you're going to see me on Instagram way more. Don't make fun of me and just let me just figure this thing out. And so what I did is I decided that for 30 days, I'm going to go on Instagram and do a story. So on Instagram stories, they only last for 24 hours and then they're gone. So for me, I felt like, okay, good. It's not permanent.
Even if I say something silly, like it won't be there forever. And you can always take it down or edit it, right? I thought I'm going to do 30 days of stories. This will help me be consistent. This will help me get comfortable. And it was always a video. Like I'm holding the phone, I'm looking at it, and I'm talking about something educational or some informational thing. It ended up running for over 100 days straight, 100 and something. And then my daughter was born. And then it was like that day or the next day, I kind of had to stop because I had other priorities. My second daughter was born. And so what you see now, that is a result of that, getting comfortable. So I would highly encourage, as I do always, if somebody's looking to get out there, start like that. And those videos are like maybe a minute, maybe 30 seconds. Just get comfortable with looking at the camera, get comfortable with saying stuff to people and educating. And eventually it becomes like you could pick up your phone in public and be like, hey guys, I'm here. Look what I'm doing. Because that was really uncomfortable for me for a long time. Still is a little bit. But that consistency of doing it really regularly is what's going to help you get better. And it doesn't take long. I know so many people say, oh, I don't have the time. But if you go sit in a room somewhere, open your phone and just talk to the camera. Hey guys, today I wanted to tell you about nearsightedness. Nearsightedness means you can't see far away. End of conversation. That's it. That's all you need to do for 30 days. And then you'll slowly start to build the other things on top of that.
That's awesome. Thank you. Solid advice. Good way to get started and super interesting to learn about you and hear your story. I'm going to send you an email after this with somebody else to connect you to. So
Great.
This is terrific. So Harbir, thank you so much for taking the time and giving the time to me and to my listeners and to everybody out there. Thank you for listening to the Power Hour Optometry podcast.